Hello, nice to see you here again. My name is Felix, and I'm gonna make another one of those videos where I just show some books in the camera and talk about them. This is about my favorite books. I made a video of my top 11 favorite books about 2 months ago, which is by far the best performing video on this channel. And ever since I uploaded it, I felt a little bit like I didn't completely do the topic justice. While those are my top 11 favorite books, I really feel like I forgot some really important ones to me. And this is kind of a follow-up video where I'll show you my other favorite books. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 here. Let's get right into them. Well, I kind of made it a rule on this list to just choose one book per author. But man, for Kafka, I really couldn't decide very well. First off, I can't believe I forgot about him, because I literally have like a tattoo here of this book. But he has his own separate shelf just for his books, so that's probably why I forgot. And having a tattoo of this book probably answers the question which one of these is my favorite. Well, I feel like America, which was published under several titles, which was the first chapter was published as The Stoker, and then the other one was, I don't know, like The Stranger or The Castaway or something like that. And also it was published under the name America, which is basically just a bunch of different fragments. And it's so hopeless and so devastating, and no matter how bad the protagonist's situation is, it just constantly gets worse and worse. And that for me really encapsulates what Franz Kafka's not only his literary work but also his life is all about. But if I really had to choose a definitive favorite, it would probably be The Castle. By far his longest work. This edition has, well, it's just a bit more than 400 pages, but it's still by far his longest work. Well, so basically the story of this is there's this what do you call that, Landvermesser. He's like this guy who does like landscape surveillance or something, land surveyor, I guess that's the word. He comes to this town, and he wants to speak to the authorities, like to the leader of this town, because he wants to work there. And it's well, classic Kafka fashion. It's this bureaucratic hellscape labyrinth where no one knows anything about anything, and he just tries to get through to this castle. And all kinds of weird twists and turns kind of barricade his way, and it's Kafka's works just make me feel unlike any other literature ever can. And that's why I love this so much. And the main character of this book is called K. That's why I have the tattoo. Obviously relating to his last name. A lot of his characters have names relating to his own. You also have in the trial, you have Joseph K. So who knows, that might be the same person, maybe not. We don't know. And yeah, I think the original version ended mid-sentence. This one doesn't. But yeah, it's also not finished, like barely any of his works are, I guess. But yeah, this is probably due for a reread, like almost all my books are. But yeah, that's The Castle by Franz Kafka. Then Johann Wolfgang Goethe, Faust, the first part. I read this very recently, like last month, but I know for a fact that it's gonna be on my favorite list because this is just probably the best thing I've ever read in my life. Which I said before, and it's not really that much about the story. The story, I actually, the first time I didn't really understand it completely. I had to Google a summary because it's written in verse and it's very old language. This is from the 1700s. No, actually, it's from the. Oh, it doesn't say here. No, I think it's from the early 1800s actually. 1808 or something like that. And yeah, so the story isn't very easy to follow, but just the way he uses language, it's absolutely mind blowing. And while it probably doesn't really translate fully, like any word, any sort of poetry will never completely maintain its essence, in my opinion, when it's translated to another language, because these verses, you can translate them in a similar way where they will still rhyme and stuff, but you can never really. I don't think you can ever really do a perfect job with translating something like this. So, yeah, but this really, if you understand German and you are into literature, just read this. I know it's kind of regarded as like almost like an elitist kind of rite of passage thing, but it really kind of opened the door towards poetry for me. And yeah, absolutely astounding masterpiece. And also the very first book that this Reklam, these little editions, every German has one of these. The very first book that they ever published, so that's pretty cool. Now something very different. The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I also read this, I think last year. And it's the story of a teenager who just goes through his teenage hardships, and he experiences love and friendship, and also, the positives and the negatives. And there is some hinting that he might have endured some sort of abuse. And as I said, I read this last year, but I really felt like thrown back into my own teenage years, and I could relate to this main character, Charlie, in so many ways, and it touched my heart so much. It's also written in letters to an unknown person, and yeah, such a deeply emotional and heartwarming book. Sadly, this guy was mainly a screenwriter, I think, and I have never watched the movie, and I don't think I really want to, because I don't really want to change my perception of this. But yeah, I think in the US, a lot of people read this in school. In Germany, almost no one really reads this, but yeah, another book that really swept me away. We have Berlin Alexanderplatz by Alfred Döblin, which was also 2 years ago. That was one of my favorite books I have read that year. And yeah, Döblin is not really super well known anymore in Germany. But yeah, it's basically, one of those novels about a city, which I think is quite a nice genre that I enjoy when it's well done. And this definitely is. It's written for a big part of it is written in the Berlin dialect, which I think would also be quite hard to translate. And nowadays in Germany, Berlin, it's our capital here in Germany, but it's also kind of like its own country, like its culture, and that is contained within the city. It's so unique. It's so different from from the rest of Germany. It's, I guess it's probably kind of like New York or something. Um, it's just it's kind of like a country with its own culture, even though it's just a city. And this was written like 100 years ago, and it really, in a very interesting way, transmits a very intense sense of what it must have been like to live there. I've never lived there. I've been there a bunch of times, and I got some friends there, but that's it. And yeah, Dublin's writing is very dark and very devastating. This is about kind of an ex-convict. It starts with him being released from prison for like attempted murder, like a serious crime, and mainly about him like spiraling back into crime, and yeah, also just making his situation worse and worse and worse. A very devastating book, but still in places like very funny almost and entertaining, and like a tragic way. I really like when, like Dostoevsky for example, when writers can write in like tragic yet funny. You kind of, I guess, kind of in a cynical way. um so yeah, really really cool book. Really a book that I wish would be known way better here or in the world. Some people got back to me and said that they have read this and that they really liked it, like from other countries. So yeah, really a big recommendation. Also, if you want to read more German literature. Then we got Die Bücherdieben, The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I bought this in German because I thought this was a German writer, but he's actually Australian and his name is German because his grandmother came from Germany, and his grandmother is, in a fictionalized way, the main character of this book. And this book is kind of marketed as like a young adult novel. I think I feel like that's mainly the target audience, but I don't think I'm in that target audience anymore. I think I'm past that. But this was so enjoyable. This was so immersive and so I guess my own grandparents were also of similar age in World War Two. Did I say this? It's about World War Two, by the way. Um, yeah, my grandpa had to flee. There are so many of these stories that will never be told and that have never been told, about what it was like to grow up in the war. And yeah, and maybe because I have this, my own background is kind of there. Maybe that's why I liked it so much. But yeah, these kids just have in their childhood, they don't really understand what's going on there. They don't understand the political situation, and they kind of live their life. They kind of live out their childhood, and then they just go to the bomb shelters at night. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but there's a massive kind of plot twist in this book, which is already kind of a spoiler, I guess, but it made me cry. I keep track of all the books that made me cry, and there's only 3 of them. The first was Steppenwolf, the second one was this, and the third one was the biography of the Scholl siblings. That's for another time. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. This absolutely shattered my heart into 1,000 little pieces. Such an incredibly sad book, and yet such an important one. And yeah, it's even though it's fiction, it's mostly historically accurate. So I always like historical fiction like that, where you can learn something while enjoying a good story. And lastly, barely any markings in this Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close by Jonathan Safran Foer. I did not expect to love this book. Quite a lot of people have recommended this to me, and it's quite experimental in format. For example, here these markings are not made by me; they were printed in the book. And then, wait, let me show you that one part. Yeah, it gets more dense and more dense. You've probably seen this part if you heard about this book. And I enjoy a good experimental book, but sometimes they are kind of gimmicky, I would say, which is alright. If they have a strong concept in like formatting or whatever, then they necessarily need a perfect story too. But that's kind of how I went into this book. And man, whoa. This book really swept me away. This was crazy. It was so gripping. The story, again, this kind of mixes some topics. This is kind of a city novel, it's about New York, and it's about the kind of the terror attacks, the 9/11. And the protagonist loses his dad, which he was like super super close to when he's like a small child, and then he like goes through the city by himself. He wanders and he makes friends. He meets all these people. There are so many different concepts explored in this book. It attempts to do so many things, and a lot of these experimental books, I haven't read too many of them, but I've definitely read House of Leaves, S by J.J. Abrams, and some others. A lot of these books, they attempt to do a lot, and they don't really always pull it off. For example, LMNOP, that novel, I really like that concept, but I don't think the story was super strong, or like S by J.J. Abrams and Dark Doors, again, super super unique concept. It doesn't really need more than that concept. I think it's fine, but this book, this story, so incredibly, it's very saturating. It has everything, kind of, it has humor, it has weird quirky writing, it has all these like more lighthearted things. But then, it's also so incredibly serious and so incredibly sad. This is probably one of the saddest books I've ever read. The ending is probably gonna make you cry. Didn't make me cry, but it might make you cry. Super, super big recommendation. Don't be thrown off by, this was, I don't remember when this was published, but it was quite famous, and some of us like to avoid these like super viral, super famous books. 2005, yeah. But yeah, check this out if you haven't. Also, if you don't usually read something like this, then you should check this out even more. Very, very, very good book. Yeah, and so, just a few little books today. That's it. Definitely share with me what your favorite books are. Definitely, if you want to share with me what your favorite books are in the comments, and which ones of these you have read. And yeah, looking forward to engaging with you in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye, my name is Felix. See you next time.